Happy birthday, Angelica, and thank you to all of you sharing in this moment. Sometimes playing without any roadmap can bring something that I call rhythmic wisdom through, and I just make it up as I go along, intuitively improvising and trying to move away from the need to be perfect or the need to impress or the part of the ego that's really looking to look good, and instead just go on the journey with the sound. And looking back, it's often possible to analyze that process and match it up against the intention that I have when I do it, and then reflect and review that with you, which I'm about to do now, for what I experience on this adventure, this journey of playing now, with the awareness that it's a full moon, with the awareness that it's about someone's birthday. Yesterday was my name day. I'm named after St. Helen, and we've come out of a very interesting time in Europe. It's softening the tension around COVID-19 lockdown, people being quarantined, into what I've been speaking about as a self-retreat moment, and really the reality of this being a time of great uncertainty and almost crisis management is needed from us, and for some great loss and grieving is taking place, suffering, and of course a huge paradigm shift possible inside all of this. And so playing now this time, I will share with you my rhythmic wisdom, what was happening as I was experiencing the sounds, was actually moving into this, I guess, symbolic sound of the wind right at the beginning. Maybe if you watch the video again after hearing this, you'll understand what I'm speaking about. This kind of turbulence that's taken over our planet and reaches some kind of pinnacle tonight is also starting off with this kind of wind of change, symbolically. And inside the wind of change, a sound is born, and in that we have what was actually quite a new rhythm that I've never played before, and that was my intention, to create a new sound tonight. But it was familiar enough to match up with other sounds that I've heard of before, that I've played before. But inside of it, something was uniquely different, or a little changed. It still didn't feel new enough though. It was still attached to the past, just like this time right now is also still connected to the old paradigm. We still have a lot of systems and structures in place that are still quite stuck and have a footing into the here and the now, as well as well into the past. And in order for us to truly shift this paradigm, we obviously have to get unwedged even more. And some thinking, I guess, unconsciously in me knows that, and moves into what I call a 6-beat rhythm, which I was taught by a woman who wrote the book When the Drummers Were Women, all about the place where I'm originally from, Cyprus, the island, and many ancient traditions of frame drumming around this whole Mesopotamian, Middle Eastern area. But many relics of frame drums were found on the island of Cyprus, and this lady taught me this rhythm, Lane Redmond, the late Lane Redmond, very famous in some circles. And it's a 6-beat rhythm which matches up pretty well with a Brazilian rhythm that they play on another drum similar to this, called the pandeiro in Brazil. And this 6-beat rhythm is quite interesting because it unlocks us from the westernized thinking and the systematic thinking of what we consider in the West much more practical and much more familiar, which is even time. And so the rhythmic wisdom, I guess, that I want to share with you is that we are, in some sense, changing time, changing the predictability of things, changing the systematic understanding of life, which limits us to think that there is no balance really with what is odd or what is strange. 6-beat rhythm, like all odd time rhythms, has something different to even time rhythms, which are, let's say, in 8, they can be divided equally into 4, again an even number. Whereas 6 is a marriage between 2 and 3, and it's often a very difficult rhythm to master for people that are very used to being in Western culture or Western musical systems. So I went into that rhythm quite naturally, just to unlock, which I do quite often. But in that unlocking, what happened was really a need to go back to the wind of change. So you heard some of that stumbling in and out of different familiar sounds from how it got set up at the beginning, and then going back into that original rhythm that was slightly different but not different enough. And then something magical happens, which is always beautiful to see when you're a drummer and you can commit to this process of exploration and adventuring through the rhythms you know into new ones, improvising in other words. Is something new got formed, and I think you might have heard it at some point, where it was playing a rhythm quite strong on the bass and then making very strong tones. That's a totally new rhythm. I've never played that before, so that was born. And so I want to say that that's the new rhythm for all of us, to know that something was tuned in to and delivered from that unified field. But we have to acknowledge that there's a process of letting go of what is familiar, creating something new, yes, in some senses, but it's not new enough. And in order to really unlock, we need to go into what is odd, what is feeling uncomfortable, what might not make sense or be really predictable. And this is kind of the unlocking of this time. And then, of course, then something new can be born from the marriage between what we know and what we don't know. And, of course, then we went back to this final closing of the wind. I call this a rhythmic improvisational piece. It's also a prayer to be in that free mind state, to not be clinging on to anything specific, and to really just be in the unified field and to bring something through. And I hope you enjoyed it. And I give to you this message, which this time comes in the form of a rhythmic experience that I explained to you and analysed pretty practically in terms of my experience playing. But sometimes playing also brings some very powerful visions and some insight, some mystical insight, which I really enjoy sharing and getting to know more deeply. And it helps always to articulate and explain it to others, because it makes it much more clear in its expression. So to all of you out there that I've never met, my name's Helenique, and I used to be a drum therapist, and now I teach frame drum to some women. But actually my pride and joy these days is to call female leaders higher, to elevate female leadership. I think this is a time we all need to be nurtured, mothered and loved into the new paradigm. And women leaders are standing by and ready to help kiss some of us over this edge, which can be very scary for some of us. So if you need some of that, look to those that you admire, and to Angelica, you are one of those for me, and to many more around the world who are ready to rise. You have me in your corner. Get in touch. Let's do great things together. And for all of you looking for the new horizon, it's there. We just do have to go through the new dawn. So sending you all love and wishing you all well. Thank you so much for inviting me to do this. Bye.